The Sony ZV... Why would they call it this? Internet, welcome back. Robert Teegarden here again with a Teegarden tech review. Today we are talking about Sony's ZV-E10, which is the now parent or the next gen of the Sony ZV-E, whatever it was. Now, I'm actually just going to get this thing started. I hate typical unboxing videos, so I'm just gonna, with the magic of video, take this and this guy and go like this guy, and now I have the Sony ZV-E10 in my hand, ready to rock and roll. The things I love about this, the things I hate about this, we're all going to get in it, but first, I'm actually traveling this weekend, so it's a perfect opportunity to take this vlogging camera and get back to what I used to do on this YouTube channel and start vlogging it up. Let's take a look at what this thing looks like over the next weekend shooting some cars. Here we go. I'm always cutting it close on traveling because I hate waiting. That's translated to me missing a few flights. I know a lot of people would think that missing a flight is a terrible thing, and I'm not advising it. But let me just tell you, sleeping on the airport floor is not as bad as you think. I can think of plenty of other places that would be terrible to sleep on. Things you may know, but I want to reiterate where this camera is concerned. It's actually the same exact internals of what I'm recording this video on right now in the A6600. A couple of main differences is the battery is different, the screen's different, and it has a bunch more features in terms of the menu system and how you access it on the A6600 than the way you see it here on the Sony ZV-E10. I'm getting really tired of saying that name a lot. But that doesn't necessarily matter. I think a lot of the components that people love about this camera and the things that are missing from this camera are stuff that people that are vlogging or looking at don't really care so much about where this camera is concerned. To put it in other words, the features that you may be missing here are probably things that you wouldn't even notice if you are the perfect user of this camera or using this camera for what it's intended for. Would I suggest that you take this camera and try to make it an A6600, an A7S Mark III, a Sony FX3? No, you'd be dreaming if you're trying to get that same cinema type quality out of this little guy that you would be getting from a full frame dedicated video hybrid prosumer camera. It's not intended for that. But the reason that I love this thing, to reiterate again, is that it's a compact form factor, interchangeable lenses with an ASPC sensor that gives me all of the things I want when I'm running, gun, and shooting to create great content vlog episodes that move a story along effectively. Are there still a need in my stories for higher end cinema type cameras? Of course. But when I have something like this that I could quite literally fit in my pocket, or a tiny little side sling from Lowepro, because Lowepro, if you're listening, and I know you are, I would love some type of sponsorship, like bags. Maybe I have my own pro gaff box for like the videographer on the go. Just a thought, but it's also copywritten because I put it in a tangible medium of expression. I'm posting it on YouTube, so it's my idea, not yours. We're here at Road Atlanta for Z Nationals. A bunch of Nissan Zs, a whole bunch of stuff for Mercedes going on up there. I think they're running tomorrow. So most of the stuff that you're seeing now is shot on this camera unless I said otherwise. I was having a weird issue cropping beforehand, trying to figure out exactly what was going on there, but it turns out that that's the active stabilization mode. So if you turn it down to standard, the crop goes away. I'm shooting right now in 4K 24p in the intelligent mode again, but just kind of loving moving around with this smaller form factor. Definitely have a lot of things that I would love to see more of, especially kind of customization of flipping back and forth between a full manual mode and then this kind of intelligent focus or image stabilized version as well. But you know, look, for a form factor that's under $1,000, you can't have it all. Using the stick right now, both to record and to walk around, gives you that little extra bit, so the perspective from a vlogging standpoint is really good. But so far, digging this thing. Battery is okay. I'm just at about 40% right now, but I was using it yesterday inside the airport and shooting a whole bunch and figuring out menu settings as well. So maybe they've actually optimized for that battery. I don't know. Another thing I love is the intelligent auto mode that's on this camera. Really, this is kind of a auto exposure that you're setting for the different parameters. Now there's one for video and for photo, and they operate slightly different. Now in picture mode, it's actually adjusting the shutter to get you the appropriate exposure, but on video, it's locked your exposure and it's adjusting the aperture in order to compensate for exposure, which I think is a pretty cool way of doing it. Now again, is this the cinematic way of doing that? Absolutely not. When I'm shooting in my real cameras, I have my shutter locked off at the 180-degree rule. My aperture is a fixed creative choice depending on what I want my depth of field to be, and I'm compensating my exposure with my ISO or with neutral density filters that I put on the front element of my lens, or if you're so fortunate to be shooting with a camera that has native neutral density filters inside, you use those too. If you need a little refresher course on how all that shit works, you can take a look at these videos up here. I did a whole series on the exposure triangle and how you can figure that stuff out. But intelligent auto, as the name would suggest, is an automatic way of setting your exposure based on the mode that you're shooting in, whether picture or video, and it gives you just a fast way of getting an appropriate exposure that you can see quickly, because the whole point of this thing is to be able to have quick, easy captures in hand, ready to go. Another thing that I love about this thing is how simple the buttons and menu system is. At first when I saw it, I was like, man, I really wish I had more customizable buttons and things like that. But again, that's not the point of this camera for me. Really, on the top, I have my record button. You've got your shutter button for photos. You've got the zoom of your wide and tight on the top. Your on and off. You have your C1, which you can program, but most people have it either on that portrait mode or the blurry background feature that we've got going on, or you can put it as the product mode as well. And then you have the switch between photo, video, and S&Q mode on the top. I shot with S&Q mode a little bit in Road Atlanta, or at Road Atlanta, and it's awesome. I mean, you put 120 frames in a camera that this small, it's pretty significant. You can also shoot in full log modes in this camera as well, so it has a variety of picture profiles that are there. I don't intend to be using different picture profiles for this often. I'll probably just shoot in the native Sony profile, but I did some test footage both in 4K and in 1080 120 just to see what grading this camera would be. And it's similar to grading the A6600, which makes sense. It's the same ASPC sensor on the inside. So we're here at one of the main apexes that comes around the back of the track right here into the straight, right? And this camera right here, the FX6, actually just had an internal heat warning that set the camera off. So we're gonna go 4K crop on this camera and just swap out a 100 to 400 lens. So if you're curious about what the ZV-E10, whatever the fuck they call this thing is, with 600 mils on it, this is what that looks like now. Also use this camera quite a bit in shooting for stories, reels, TikTok, and have kind of an interesting workflow that I think people are going to love where this one's concerned. I'll shoot vertically with this camera handheld. Basically what I've been doing is a ton of whip hands and like in-camera transition techniques that you've probably seen on Jesse Driftwood or those types of things. And what I end up doing is sending them to my phone via the Wi-Fi connection of this camera. People might ask, why wouldn't you just shoot with your phone, Teegarden? You have an incredible phone with great sensors. Because it doesn't have an APS-C sensor and it's not running Sony picture profile and color science. That's why. So I shoot with this guy and I send it to my phone, and then I just upload those things into Reels, Stories, TikToks, and edit them in the app itself. Once I have that, you can see that the quality of these things compared to what you'd be shooting with your phone is incredible, but it looks like you actually shot it on your phone, and the profiles, or the platforms, excuse me, seem to recognize it as if it was coming from a phone itself, because the algorithm knows whether or not you shoot it on this versus this. That workflow, most of the time, if you're shooting to edit and giving it close, shorter clips, is really fun to do, and the quality is noticeably different. Not to mention the fact that you can put different lenses on this thing and get a crazy depth of field or something that just looks insane, but that short workflow to be able to post stuff to stories, to your reels, to TikTok is something that's awesome and an added benefit I don't see a lot of people doing with this particular camera. If we're talking about vlogs, it's very difficult to put something together without some form of a time lapse. And this guy has a fantastic intervalometer mode built inside. This isn't the first time we've seen something like this in Sony cameras. My A66 has it, my A7 Mark III has it, my FX3 has it. But again, to have something like this in a small form factor like that is really great. I played around with this while I was waiting in the airport to come home and got some good quality images that I want to share. And it's pretty easy to do once you've loaded your images onto your hard drive. Importing that into Premiere, you want to click on your first image and make sure you check this box of importing an image sequence. Once that's done, you can actually control, just on basic speed ramping, the length of time it's going to take for that time lapse to transpire. And something that I also love doing is changing my optics into an optical flow rather than just the standard motion. It kind of gives a little bit of motion blur in there that I think makes them unique. You can also start to keyframe things and add your scale and positioning, which I think is adding a nice little touch rather than your static image sequence or time lapse sequence. So there you go. Another great feature about this camera, internal time-lapse modes. Doesn't really get better than that. But all in all, I'm incredibly impressed with this camera. A sub $800, if you're just getting the camera without the handle, to have this many features packed in a 4K camera, flippy screen, great audio quality. You have the different intelligent auto modes. You have the different picture profiles that you can shoot in full log. You've got good battery life. You've got the S&Q modes. You've got the picture profile. You've got the product showcase. And to think that it's under $1,000 is what you're getting in, it's just really hard to look at any other camera manufacturer across the board and say that someone's giving more options to video creators than Sony right now. Are there better cameras for certain types of things? Of course, but in terms of the grand scheme of things and what they're offering, Sony's really got everyone on the ropes right now. So if you like the video, like the damn video with that in mind. If you haven't already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. I post content on filmmaking tips and the business of being a creative on a regular basis. With that in mind, this is a Teegarden tech review in the can. I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching. TTFN.